Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games and part 5 of this How to Play Horus Heresy series. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll be taking you through the Assault phase. So far we've gone through general principles, reactions, movement and shooting, so now it's time to look at the Assault phase. If you're finding this video series helpful and you'd like to support the channel, then there's loads of ways you can do that. You can join my Patreon, buy a copy of my book Weekend Warriors, or leave a super thanks down below. You can also visit my sponsors, and I'll put links in the description below, and it's thanks to this month's sponsors that I can continue making these daily videos, so a huge thank you to everyone's support on the channel. Okay, let's get started with the Assault phase. The Assault phase is split into two sub-phases, the Charge sub-phase and the Fight sub-phase. Let's have a look at the Charge sub-phase first. In the Charge sub-phase, the active player declares charges and moves models under their control into close combat. And close combat is where the two units from opposing armies are in base contact with each other. If there are more than two units, it is called a multiple combat. The first step in the Charge subphase is to declare a charge, and so you choose a unit in your army that is declaring a charge and nominate the enemy unit it is attempting to charge. Units may not charge if they have already charged in this phase and are now locked in combat, or if they are falling back, and there'll also be some other conditions that prevent them from doing it. Once you've declared a charge, you need to roll the charge distance. So for this, you'll roll 2d6 and then add the charge modifier that's shown on the table on page 181 of the core book. The result of the roll may not exceed a total of 12 or a minimum of 2, no matter what modifiers are applied to the roll. Other factors may also impose a modifier on the charge distance of a unit, for example, terrain features. With the roll result modified, now you've got your charge distance. This is the number of inches your assaulting unit can move as part of its charge. If any model in the target enemy unit is within the rolled charge distance, then the charge is considered to be successful and the controlling player should now make a charge move. But if no model in the target enemy unit is within the charging unit's roll distance charge, then the unit is considered to have failed and a surge move is made. To make a surge move, all the models in a unit must move towards the unit that was the target of the failed charge, but the distance moved is equal to half the value of the charge roll, and that includes any modifiers that were made for the unit. Once the charge roll is resolved, the active player may now choose to attempt a charge with a different unit or move on to the Fight subphase. The first step in the Fight subphase is to choose a combat. There may be several separate assaults being fought at the same time in different parts of the battlefield. If this is the case, the active player chooses the order in which to resolve the combats, completing each combat before moving on to the next one, and so on until all combats are resolved. In close combat, both players' models will fight, and close combat attacks function in the same way as attacks made in the shooting phase. Each attack that hits has a chance to wound, and the wounded model gets a chance to save. If it fails, it is generally removed as a casualty. Initiative determines which units attack first in close combat, and you work through the initiative values of the models involved in close combat from high down to low. This is called the initiative steps, and these will start at 10 going down to 1. At the start of each initiative step, any model whose initiative is equal to the value of the current initiative step that is not in base contact with an enemy model may make a pile-in move. This is a 3-inch move, and models that are piling in must attempt to get as close as possible to one or more of the enemy units locked in this combat. A pile-in move cannot be used to move into base contact with any units that are not already involved in the combat. When making your pile-in moves, the active player moves their unit first. If both players' pile-in moves combined would be insufficient to bring any combatants into base contact, then the combat is considered to have ended. Now we need to determine who can fight. Any model whose initiative is equal to the value of the current initiative step and who is engaged with an enemy model must fight. A model is engaged in combat if either that model is in base contact with an enemy model, or that model is in unit coherency with another model from its own unit which is in base contact with an enemy model. Unengaged models cannot attack in close combat. Each engaged model will now make a number of attacks as indicated on its characteristic profile, plus the following bonus attacks. First is a charge bonus, and this is for engaged models that charge this turn. They'll get a +1 attack this turn. The second bonus is the 2 weapons bonus, and engaged models with 2 single-handed weapons, often a melee weapon and or pistol in each hand, get +1 attacks. Models with more than 2 weapons gain no additional benefit, you only get 1 extra attack. Now we roll to hit, and to make a hit roll, roll a d6 for each attack a model gets to make, and compare the weapon skill of the attacking model to the weapon skill of the target unit. Then consult the to hit chart that you can find on page 186 of the core book to find the minimum result needed on a d6 to hit. Once all to hit rolls have been made in a given initiative step, the controlling player must roll a d6 for each successful hit to see if the attack causes a wound. Now we consult the chart that you can find on the roll to wound chart section of page 186 of the core book. Just like with shooting, there will be times where the weapon strength cannot beat the target's toughness and no wounds can be taken. Now we allocate the wounds, and first the player whose unit is the target of the attack selects any one model in the unit that is engaged with the enemy unit whose attacks are being resolved. If any model in the target unit has already lost 1 or more wounds but has not been removed as a casualty, the wound must always be allocated to such a model. With wounds allocated, the models now must make their saving throws and a damage mitigation roll, but only if that model has any available. For each save that is failed, reduce that model's wounds by 1, and if the model is reduced to 0 wounds, it is removed as a casualty. Otherwise, continue allocating wounds to the selected model until it is removed or the wound pool is empty. In melee, models do not get cover saves against any wounds from the close combat attacks. But as we went through in the shooting phase, if the wound is caused by a weapon with an AP that ignores the wounded model's armor save, then the save cannot be taken. Invulnerable saves may also be used in close combat. Now we continue this process and fight through each of the initiative steps all the way down to initiative number 1. With that complete, it's time to determine the assault results, and to decide who's won the combat, total up the number of unsaved wounds inflicted by each side on their opponents. The side that inflicted the most unsaved wounds is the winner, and the losing unit must make a morale check and must fall back. If both sides suffer the same number of wounds, the combat is drawn and continues next turn. We'll be covering the morale and fallback rules in the next video. Once all the combat has been resolved, it's time for an end of combat pile-in. Sometimes models from units that did not fall back are not in base contact with an enemy, and so they'll have to make the 3-inch pile-in move. If a unit's opponents are all either destroyed or falling back, or the end of combat pile-in was insufficient so that is no longer locked in combat, that unit may now consolidate. Consolidating units move up to a number of inches equal to their initiative characteristic in any direction. In a unit with mixed initiative characteristics, use the highest. That covers the basic rules for the assault phase, so come and join me for the final video in this series where we'll be taking a look at the morale phase. If you'd like to pick up a copy of Age of Darkness or any other hobby items, I'll put a link down below to Firestorm Games. If you order from them before the 31st of August, you'll also save an additional 5% on the usual up to 20%, so some big savings to be made there, and you'll also support the channel as I get a small commission from every sale made through that link. Thanks so much for watching. If you did like it, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.